welcome to Adventures Abroad in Science. We have with us today Adele Wright, Professor Susan Scott, and Dr. Nicole Hellessey, who is going to talk with us about her work with Antarctic krill. So, studying krill, tell us about what you do with krill. What are they?
So krill are crustaceans. They're about 6 centimeters long, so about as big as your little finger. But lots of people sort of think of them as like prawns and shrimp, but they're actually really, really not related to them at all. They're an entirely different order called Euphorsiaceae, so they're completely different. But my PhD was looking at their diet and how that changes in time and space and with climate change. And now I'm obviously doing the video analysis where we're videoing them in some flumes and seeing how their behaviour changes based on chemicals and different flow rates in those flumes.
First of all, what do krill eat? And how are they coping with climate change? Are they decimating their numbers? Are they going down?
So krill are primarily herbivores, but they are omnivorous. So they also eat things like copepods, which are little bugs that live in the water. They're only about 1 or 2 millimeters long, but they'll also eat fish eggs, squid eggs, bacteria, viruses, but most of their food is algae that lives on the underside of the sea ice in Antarctica.
Okay. Yeah, and how are they coping with climate change?
Krill are actually doing particularly well. They're a bit like the cockroaches of the sea. You just can't kill them. They live in lots of different environments. So the krill I study is Antarctic krill, but they're found in oceans all over the world. So krill are incredibly resilient to a lot of different kinds of environments.
Okay, well that's probably good news for us, is it?
Yes, so it's really great news because particularly Antarctic krill are the center of the ecosystem for Antarctica. So they eat everything that's smaller than them, but everything that's bigger than them eats krill. So all those lovely penguins and whales and seals that we all think of when we think of Antarctica need that krill. So knowing that krill will be here regardless of what happens in the next 150 years is definitely a large weight off my shoulders.
Okay, so you've been in Atlanta since January and you were in Canberra before that?
No, I was in Tasmania before that.
Okay.
So yeah, I grew up in Canberra, so I was there from age 4 till age 18. Then went to Tassie and did my undergrad, had my son, came back to Canberra for about 10 months and then decided I wasn't through with science yet and went back to Tassie to do a master's and then hung around for a PhD as well.
Wow. And what's it like in Atlanta compared with, I suppose, Tasmania and Australia generally?
Far more humid than I'm used to.
And I know you've got some stories to tell us, so let's kick off with one of them, the container story.
The containers, yes. The first scientific voyage that I went on was with the CSIRO on their new investigator that they got only a few years ago. And we were doing an oceanographic voyage that went down to the East Antarctic ice shelf and then up the 180th parallel into Wellington in New Zealand.
Wow.
And we were 3 days out of Hobart, and one of the beautiful girls who was working on the genomics team with me, it was her first voyage and she'd done really well organising all of the logistics and the stuff at the back end, we suddenly realised that we had no containers to put our samples in. So we weren't about to turn around and go back to Hobart because we were already underway and we couldn't lose another 3 days to get back to Hobart and then 3 days to get back to where we were. So we decided to search the ship to find what we could find. And after an extensive search, we found some plastic containers that we could use, but they were full of ice cream. So after some keen negotiation with the doctor on board, he made a PA announcement at 7 o'clock the next morning that everyone on board must have 250 millilitres of ice cream every night before dinner to make sure that we had enough ice cream containers for the next day.
Oh, that's a wonderful story. How many of you were sick after that?
There were some of us who were sick at the time. We were definitely sick of ice cream when we got home. I know I couldn't eat it for another 6 months afterwards.
Oh, I've got to keep asking about ice cream. Were there all sorts of different flavours?
There were. We were very lucky. The CSIRO has an amazing catering staff that they take on their ships with them. So we had a large variety of different flavours.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to pass you on to Dr. Phil now, who is our resident scientist, who has a few more questions to ask you. Phil.
Hey, Nicole.
Hi.
So tell us a bit more. Are you in the lab, or are you actually doing field work? Are you out chasing krill under the ice, swimming after them?
So depending upon what day of the week it is, I could be in the lab building the flumes that we put them in. I could be in the field in Antarctica collecting krill or doing experiments in Antarctica, or I could be sitting at my computer doing video analysis. So it depends on the day of the week.
And everybody knows that science is all about sex. So tell us what sex is like for krill.
So sex in krill is one of my favourite things to talk to high school kids about, because they immediately go, ooh, gross. But then you start talking about how the male krill have a pirate hook for a hand called a batasma, and female krill have this big, almost tulip-shaped structure on their stomach that's bright red called a thalicum. And what the male krill do is they use that pirate hook and they detach the sperm sacs from their own stomachs, and then they high-five them onto the tulip flower of the stomach of the females. So it's a little bit less contact sport than what we have.
It's poetic, positively poetic.
Yeah, they just go high-fiving each other's stomachs.
So tell us about how you got excited about Antarctic science, because, you know, coming from Canberra, what's your option? Looking for European carp in Lake Burley Griffin, and then suddenly you're into Antarctic stuff.
So I fell in love with marine science when I was really, really young. I've always loved marine science, but it wasn't until I got to uni and I did one unit in third year of my undergrad that was on Antarctic ecology, and from that point on I was hooked. The idea of having a career where I could actually do that for a living, studying Antarctica, going to Antarctica, working with international collaborators, that was the dream.
So were there any steps along the way that you took? Because, you know, obviously to jump from, you know, Tuggeranong to suddenly being an Antarctic scientist, you worked at CSIRO for a while, was it?
So my PhD was in conjunction with CSIRO as well as the Antarctic Division. So I worked at a few different places along the way, but probably the biggest sort of detour was between my master's and my PhD, where I worked at a salmon fishery for 18 months as one of their environmental officers. And
that can be dangerous, I believe.
It certainly can be. So the main part of my job was tranquilizing seals to get them out of the salmon pens, because there's lots of tasty, delicious salmon in there. How dare you? So my job was to tranquilize them and get them out onto our boat, where we'd then relocate them to somewhere that was away from where the salmon pens were, but that was safe for them to be. And I misjudged how much an anesthetic to put into the tranquilizing dart with a particularly small seal that was in the pen. So I thought it was slightly larger than what it was. No, slightly smaller, sorry, wrong way around. Slightly smaller than what it was. So I didn't put quite enough anesthetic into the dart, and it started to wake up before it got to shore. And of course, I was sitting near its head, monitoring it, making sure that it was doing okay, and it very lazily opened its jaws and clamped onto the back of my leg.
Ouch! Took a bite out of you. I thought, I guess they are carnivores, aren't they? It mistook you for a salmon.
Yes, they're definitely carnivores. Not a huge bite, more of 5 or 6 little puncture wounds that, if you didn't know what it was, you'd sort of go,
Okay. Well, that shows your dedication to your science. You've sacrificed life and limb for it, literally.
I certainly did.
Yeah.
It was an interesting conversation with the doctor afterwards, because seals are known to have syphilis, so trying to convince them that I needed an STD check for this was an interesting conversation to have with my GP.
I bet it was. Okay, we might just go to a news flash.
That was the final clip from our nominated films. Weren't those Krills cute? The envelope, please. The winner of the best science documentary is Krill Bill. And to accept the award is its director and my very good friend, Tintin Quarantino.
That was a fabulous achievement for Krill Bill. You were involved in the making of that documentary, were you, Nicole? I'm very pleased to welcome to the stage the phenomenally talented Cheddar. Woo!
Hello, hello. Oh, Nicole, I'm so very, very happy to meet you. That is fantastic. Tell me, how do you train krills?
I don't really train them, but I do track them.
How do you track them?
So I use cameras and I film them, and then I take that video and I put it in my computer and I follow them with my finger.
Oh, that's so exciting. That's so exciting. Look, I've done a bit of research and I just love the work you do. And I have some questions too. May I?
Please, go ahead.
Look, I'm afraid this first one is just a little bit controversial, but I've been thinking about this a lot, and aren't krill really just prawns?
No, unfortunately they're not.
Okay. Well, I was just a bit confused because, they look the same, don't they? Well, anyway, the question is more about me, I suppose. You see, although I'm not a scientist, I still have to watch my weight. So, can humans, eat krill? If so, where can I get some? If not, why not? I think I put that really well, don't you?
That was definitely very well phrased. So you can have krill, but only their oils. So they're sold as omega-3 supplements, and you can get them at most of your chemists. But you certainly don't want to eat a whole krill, because otherwise you'll end up with fluoride poisoning.
Oh, okay. But could that help my teeth, maybe? Isn't fluoride good for teeth?
It is good for teeth, but there's so much fluoride that you just end up bleeding out of all the sorts of places you don't want to bleed out of.
Oh, that sounds horrible. Well, okay.
Yeah.
Now, this next one's it's not really a question for you. It's more like a shout out to all my fans. But it has something to do with scientists, because I'm sure some of my fans are scientists. Are you one of my fans?
Definitely.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, anyway, I have my own line of lingerie. It's called Cheddar Cheesecloth Onesies, and I'm thinking of expanding into work gear. So, I love the fact that krill are orange with green digestive systems and gorgeous big black eyes. So I'm thinking of having green krill wear and black krill boots. What do you think? Because orange is good for safety, and green and orange go so well together, don't they?
I think it sounds fabulous. Take it to Paris.
Oh, I will, thank you. Oh, that's because you're a scientist. You're good at giving advice, aren't you? All right. Now, I've heard about your adventures too. So, do you have any more like that one? A little birdie told me you went swimming once.
I did. I went swimming in a very special place. It's an active volcano.
An active volcano? But wouldn't you get burnt or something?
No, so it's not quite that hot because it's in Antarctica. It's a subantarctic island that's also a volcano, and part of the caldera is collapsed in. So you can take your boats into the centre of it and go swimming in the caldera of the volcano. But the water's still only 4 degrees, so it's still quite cold.
That's really cold. That's like cool. That's like freezing. Oh, I could also have cheddar krill swimwear just for swimming in the Antarctic.
I would love a krill swimsuit.
Okay, maybe a bit of a tail and some antennae.
Sounds good to me.
Done. Okay, over to you, I think.
All right. So thank you so much, Cheddar, for joining us. We're going to open the floor now. Scientists talking to each other. What's going to happen here? Do you have any questions or thoughts to share?
Yes, I have
Susan.
a couple of questions.
Yeah.
Nicole, I'd like to know how you collect the krill. I mean, I think you said some of them are under the ice shelf. How do you? What's the process of collecting them?
So most of the krill that I got from my PhD were actually collected by the krill fishery. So we were working in conjunction with one of the companies that goes down there and harvests them. So they were collecting 100 krill a day for us for 3 years. But normally if you go down as a scientist, you can do things called ice netting, where you cut a hole in the ice and then you quite literally lay on your stomach on the ice and get your net and scoop underneath the ice to collect your krill. But there's other ways, like using trawl nets from the back of boats, which is the one that is most commonly used.
Okay, my other question is, is there an estimate for the number of krill currently alive on the planet?
So in terms of number, like of individual krill as opposed to biomass, so their number is somewhere around 50 to 60 trillion individuals, but their biomass is only in the hundreds of millions of tons, and that's obviously because they're just so small.
Thank you.
So there's still plenty of them around.
Oh yeah, they're one of the most numerous species on Earth.
Even more so than ants? Probably not.
I don't think they quite get there with ants, but it depends on the species, I guess.
And have you seen them in other places besides Antarctic yourself? Have you chased krill in the Mediterranean or the...
Not yet, but theoretically in the next 3 weeks I'm supposed to go up to Maine and try and get some northern krill near Nova Scotia so that we can actually test our flumes before we take them to Antarctica.
Right. Are they very different from the Antarctic ones?
Very different, yes.
And you and Susan have a connection, I believe. You've both been to Antarctica, is that right?
Yes, we've both been to Antarctica on the same program called the Homewood Bound program, which is an international leadership program for women in science. And Nicole, I believe you were on the first one?
I was on the inaugural program where we were being guinea pigs seeing if it worked.
And I was on the second one where we were being less of guinea pigs. And we actually went in slightly different times of the year. Nicole went down, I think, November, December.
Yes, we were there in December.
Yeah, and we were there like February, March, which was kind of late in the season. So.
And so you knew not to go swimming in the volcano, is that right?
No, our team also went swimming. It's the legend was made in the first expedition, and people felt that they had to kind of live up to that. So no, the tradition continues.
So when you say our team, does that mean that you specifically were involved in the swim?
No, I was the filmer. I mean, obviously somebody takes these videos.
Very convenient for you.
And the responsibility fell to me to get a decent video of our team. So.
And so you've headed to the US, Nicole, and that's where Adele has spent a bit of time and is soon to go. Have you got any advice for her about what to do when you land in the US? How to get started?
I'd suggest getting here after November because you've got a much better chance of someone else being in the presidential office.
But for you, what have been particular sort of adventures about moving continent?
Getting visas is not the easiest part. So try and get a hold of that as quickly as you can before they change all the rules.
And what about sort of starting in a new research group and all that kind of stuff?
It really depends on what lab you're in. The lab that I'm in only has 5 people. So there's the professor, me, 2 PhD students, and 1 undergrad. So it was a very quiet sort of introduction to everybody. Technically, I still haven't met one of the PhD students. But yeah, I dare say that depending upon where you're going and what you're doing, they will let you know what you need to know. But definitely, if you can, pack a jar of Vegemite with you because the stuff that they've got here doesn't taste the same.
And what about sort of social life stuff, setting up a new... You made some contacts fairly quickly, I believe.
I did. I was very lucky. So as part of my hobby that I do in my free time, I'm part of a medieval reenactment group. And it's a global society. So I found the group that's based in Atlanta and I put a Facebook post up saying, hey, I'm moving over here. Can anyone help me couch surf for the first few weeks until I get my feet? And I was incredibly lucky that I had someone put their hand up and go, yeah, sure, I'll take a risk with you. So I stayed with them for 2 weeks while I then got a US phone number and a bank account and leased an apartment and, all those kinds of wonderful fun things. But it was really nice because going into that sort of environment, we knew that as a bare minimum, we were both nerds.
Wow. Can I just say something else?
Yes.
Thanks. Because, in Canberra, sometimes when I've been going for a walk, I see all these strange people sort of playing, play acting, I suppose. It's sort of near the Arboretum and they're all dressed up in armour. Do you dress up in armour?
I do. So we've got 2 different kinds of sword fighting in our society. So we do rapier fighting, which is the kind that I do, which uses thin swords that are made of metal, but we use fencing masks as part of our armour. But then we also have heavy combat, which is more the guys that you'd see in like the plate metal that from head to toe. But they use rattan, which is a kind of bamboo, to hit each other as opposed to metal, because that way they're not likely to either damage themselves, damage the armour, and the bamboo doesn't splinter in the same way that wood does, which means that even if the sword breaks, they're still safe.
Don't damage my armour.
Wow. Gee, I'm learning so much today.
Adele, have you got a habit like that is going to help you? You ever fought with a sword?
Not with a sword, but I do have a black belt in karate. So.
All right.
Well, won't cross you then.
All right. On that note, I think we better wrap up.
Yeah, so thank you very much, Nicole. And thank you very much to our other guest, Cheddar.
Thank you.
Thank you. A round of applause for our guest.